Hey guys, Afshin again, and welcome to part 5 of the Vex Onshape tutorial. Last time we covered the basics of making plastic parts, but today we're taking it a step further and looking at how to actually create your custom parts alongside a robot like the drivetrain that I have modeled here. As always, if you haven't watched the earlier parts, I recommend checking those out with the link in the top right, so everything in the video just makes sense. But for now, let's jump straight into it. Alright, so just for some context on this drivetrain, this is something that I catted out a few weeks ago for my own bot actually. So it's Vex Legal, 55 watts. So if you got the first 5 people who let me know that they want it, I'll DM it to you. Just give me your Discord and I'll DM it to you. And also, shout out to Parker from 7064. Let me double check that. No, my bad. Parker from 7046 for giving some of the idea from his robot. As today, we're gonna be making a drivetrain cap, wall rider, along with a liner, all in 2 poly pieces. So this would be a great example for something both to just learn how to CAD in general, so you guys can see, for plastic pieces, but also just seeing how my general workflow of making plastic pieces along with a robot. So to start, what I generally like to do is I generally like to start with the sizing that we're allowed to have. So I'm gonna start by, so since we're making slides, start from the top. I'll make a rectangle. This is all stuff that I showed and explained in the last video. I'll make it this way 4 inches, so just clicking D to get that hotkey for the dimension tool. That way 8 inches, clicking the check mark, Shift E for the hotkey to extrude, that's just that button there, clicking that out, and making this 0.0625 inches, the general plastic size. And then if you want, you can change this. I like to always have my plastic black, but that's personal preference. And then you can set this to whatever material if you want. That's also personal preference, so you can see how much stuff we're weighing. Realistically, I'd use Delrin for something like this, so I'm just going to set it as that. Then we can go to the assembly and actually start working. So to insert, I'm going to click the S for all my quick tools. There's also insert over there, but I like using this one. Then since we're in our actual document, we can say current document, part studio, since it's a part studio, and say this one. And then after that, we can mate it. Shift, hold down, select that corner, and I'm gonna select this corner over here, so it lines up nicely. And then from here, this is where we're gonna actually go into some interesting stuff. So one cool feature that Vex has, not Vex, my bad, that Onshape has is if you right click, there's something called edit in context. And this basically means you can edit the plastic piece while being able to see the rest of the bot. So like for example, I can click create new context. And then from here, I can adjust this to however I want the bot. So I always like to, after here, delete and remake these sketches according to how I want everything to be. So I'll start with a sketch actually on the metal because we want to build from the metal. Because we're gonna attach this poly piece to the metal presumably. And from there, I want to make a hole right in the center of this. So to get that, I'll measure in the middle of those two and have one hole there. And then I want another hole here. This one, for this hole, it's a little bit more tricky. So you want 3 points, kind of like it shows there. And I'm just aligning it so that they're horizontal and vertical to each other. And then if you select your midpoint tool, we can select that that point is in the middle of that one, and this point is in the middle of that one, which will make this one exactly in the center. So now we have our 2 holes that we want for the actual piece. Then for our slide itself, we can we can set our circle to show how big we want our slide to be. So say we want our slide to be, how big do we want our slide to be? We can say 1/2 inch from the wall. So if we go there and there, we can set this to 1/2 inch. And now that's set to 1/2 inch from the wall. After that, we say we want our funnel, we want to set where our funnels want to end. So say we want our funnels to end somewhere like over here. So we can just guess for now. What we definitely do know is that we want to make sure that our funnels is a straight line from essentially the top of here to over here. So that means if we were to make something kind of like this, we could have it set like that and then go to that point. And then since we want it exactly on the top, we could set this point and click V for the vertical and make it vertical to this point. So that would be exactly straight up and down from that. And then I'm going to use this trim tool. You generally don't have to, I just find it nice to, but to cut this out makes me feel good inside. And now this is a nice straight line. And then from there, this can be, oh, that point didn't go map to that same point over there. So I'll click I, and that makes anything like on the same exact spot. So I set this point and that point to the exact same spot. And then I guess we have to leave that, so we don't want to cut that for now. And then we want this to be exactly in the middle of the drivetrain. So to do that, what I would do is I would create a line from this side of the drivetrain to that side of the drivetrain. And then to make sure this is right in the middle of that hole, we can use that and then midpoint, and then click this to be vertical so it's in the same line. And then I'm gonna make this using construction because this is not actually something that I really want. I just want to know where the middle of the robot is. So then I can hover over the line to find the midpoint. So here's the midpoint. And that way I know we want our plastic to end specifically right here. So for this video specifically, I'm gonna make a curved polyaligner. So to make a curved polyaligner, we're gonna have it so that it's like this. So we'll have one point there. And then we also want to keep in mind that we stay within our 4x8. So to do that, I'm gonna have this over here, and I'm gonna set this as a construction. Since this is not something I want to actually make anymore, it's a construction. Then I'm gonna use tangent function to make sure this line and this line are right against each other, and that line are right against each other. And then I can see how long this is. So this is just 3 inches. And then I can see how, like, oh, it seems I made this a little off. Okay, so keep in mind, Catter's best friend, Control Z. You can always go back. So I'm gonna make this tangent from the top. So now I can go up, down, left, and right as much as we want. Okay, so I was fine. So you can make that tangent, and this can go down as much as you want. Since we want our liners to you want your liners to go as deep into your robot as possible, I can set this to exactly 4 inches. So now we know our plastic piece is going to be exactly as big as we want it to be. So, and you can show this to the judges and show, hey, my plastic is within size because I did this. And you can show this side is 7.55 and that side's 4 inches. This is something that's really, really nice to do, and it just shows that you're good. Anyways, then we're going to make the stuff around this hole. So general rule for holes, you want this circle to be 0.5 inches. But for this scenario in specific, I want this circle to be tangent with this one, with this line, because that way this and this actually connect. So we're gonna have that connect, and then we're gonna have this as a thing over here, and have this connect back through here. And then we can have this line go through this point. And this line over here. Now, while this is a poly piece you could use, you could probably tell that it is not that strong. So to make it a little bit stronger, I'm going to connect it back to this side. So to do that, we're going to make another rectangle over here. And then we're going to have it connect to this hole. So to have it connect to this hole, we'll do the same process here. And we're going to make it vertical to that. So I just click V to get that tool. And then we want to make sure that it's exactly in the middle of that. So I can create another point, use midpoint, and make it in the middle of that. Make sure this is directly horizontal to that one. And then we have our hole there. And then you remember the 0.5 rule? I'm going to use that. I'm going to make sure that this is about 0.5. But then you can see your construction line over here. So then you know that you can't go further than that. So instead of making this 0.5, since if we were to make this 0.5, it goes a little bit past. Instead, I'm going to make it tangent to that construction line. So it's exactly that size, and it's 0.4, which generally is good enough for Vex at these purposes. And then I'm going to connect this back up to here. Oh, yep, connect this back up to here. And then for me personally, I like to have it exactly flush with the C channel. So I'm going to set I. Use I, and now, if I doesn't work, you can always just dimension it normally. So use I, and then set that. Okay, so now it's showing degrees, which means that these aren't exactly parallel. So instead, what we can do is you can go back. We can set this to be okay, so since these aren't directly parallel, it's not that big of a problem. Instead of using line to line, you can do point from point. So like I can pick a point from there, and I can set this to 0. So now that's exact and 0. And I can pick a point from here, and pick a point on this line, and set that to 0. So now it's relatively exactly onto that metal. And then when I go to actually make it a 3D object, I can click done and show the sketch. Click Control E and select everything that I want to be made. Oh. Let's try that again. Yeah, sometimes it's a little finicky with the order that you do it. And then I personally am going to take out that little circle, so this is just a nice straight line. And you have a nice little poly piece. And from there, to make your holes for the C channel, you can click that, and then make sure you have this set to drilled. You can have it set to clearance, and then set the size from there. I personally don't like to. I found that if you use drilled, and then you go here and select, for screws you want to use 18, for shafts you want to use 16, I believe. Yeah, for shafts it's 16, for screws it's 18, and that'll make it so that these holes are basically exactly the size of the VEX screws, which are really nice. And then you can select all the holes that you want there to be holes on. So, and then we want one to be there, and then make sure they're the right size. So one thing you can notice is that this isn't the size of plastic because I forgot to set this to the right size. So I'm gonna set this to the right size, and now we can see the holes all showing up nicely. So now if we were to go look at this in CAD, in the assembly, we'll show that it shows a red mark, like red error sign. Don't worry about that, just delete it and put back in the part. So I'm going to go to here and then click the part studio. It might show up like this. It might show up as like an unloaded screen, but now if you check it out, this works. It fits exactly onto your piece, and you have a perfect aligner. And you might ask, hey, what about the other side? Well, for the other side, what you can do is a few things. One, you can go into the part studio itself, hide all my sketches. Okay, I'll just do it from here. Hide all the sketches, and then you can select mirror. So there's a mirror function in here as well. So you can set like mirror, and then you can select a mirror plane. So say your mirror plane is, you can select you can re-show any of these planes, and now you have that as a mirror plane. So you can use that, but oftentimes you don't actually need to use this, and that's an extra step. All you have to do is, if you go back to the assembly, I'm going to copy paste this, you can just turn this around and it'll work. So over here I'm attaching it, but that's facing through. We don't want it to face through. We flip the axis and turn it around, and now that is perfectly made aligner, exact to size. In general, just a note, it's nice to have a little bit of clearance here so that these are not exactly touching. So for example, if I were to go back into edit to context, I could go and I could snip, like create another sketch, and I could snip a little bit of this off. So say I have that, I have that line up with that, this line up with that, and I only want to snip off, wrong size. I only want to snip off 0.125 or an eighth. Then I can do that, Shift E, and click remove over here, and that'll close it off. And then if I go back to the assembly, there'll be that little gap. So edit in context is a really nice way to edit these parts relating to your drivetrain, and it lets you quickly build pieces like these that are really high tech and seem complicated, but really they're pretty easy to make. And in general, it's always good to double check. Like for example, you can see over here that this wheel is really close to the that piece. So then what I can do is I can go back into edit in context, I can go back to the sketch, and I can cut this part out. So say for example from here to there, I create a line there, and then I use M, and I can just trim that out so there's more space for that wheel. And now that's over there, and I can go back to my assembly, and it's updated both of them. It will update there. Sometimes Onshape can be a little slow, but it's updated both of them exactly how we wanted it. Other than that though, that's really all there is when you're making plastic according to your bot. It's just a really nice way to add something on your bot, go back, check, without having to work in the part studio and guess about everything. But anyways, hope you guys had fun watching the video. please like and subscribe, and comment down below what team you're rooting for the World Cup. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have fun, and check out the other playlists, other videos in the playlist. See you guys, and bye.